Talk Uganda, the Educators Dialogue. I am excited to be your host. My name is Lilian Namala. In studio, I have Noah, I have Elizabeth, I have Crescent. These are not new faces. We have seen them in our previous episodes. And today, the topic is really, really exciting. But before we dive into the topic, Noah, what have you been up to?
Well, thank you, Lilian. It's always a pleasure being on the show. Since the last time I was here, of course, I've been through our usual hustle. That's nurturing manners. And this is what I've been doing all along, and something that excites me so much.
Wow, that's good to know. Elizabeth, what have you been up to?
Oh, thank you so much for always hosting me on Talk Uganda. It's a pleasure to always be here and give educational insights and in other spheres of life. Lately, I've been, like you know, I'm an advocate of the girl child. So I've been out there empowering the girl child. Yeah.
Wow, incredible. Girl children out there are happy to have you on the show once again. Crescent, what are you up to lately?
Well, thank you, Lilian, for having me once again in the studios. I'm delighted to be here, always to be part of this team. Allow me to greet our viewers out there. I greet you all and thank you for being committed to watching our show here. So, like I've always said, Crescent is a very committed educator, passionate about, inspiring young people to reach their full potential in life and find their purpose, and meaning in life, as well as an advocate for boy child's development. And that's what I'm really passionate about, to see that, there is that inspiration that these people are picking up to become better, citizens of this country. Thank you once again for having me.
Wow, quite a profile once again. Thank you so much for sharing that insight on what they have been up to. And today, the topic is quite an intriguing one. We are talking about the teenage crisis. When you look at social media, we're looking at newspapers, we're looking at so many reports coming out on teenagers and teenage behavior. So, what do you think is the problem? When you compare the previous generation to what we're living in today, what is the difference between the two generations?
I would say that there is really a big gap between the previous generation and the current generation. I know I have heard of terms like millennials, pre-millennials.
The Gen Zs.
Now we have the Gen Zs. So yeah, I've really heard of these terms, which I really struggle with, especially that I'm getting stratified in the backward generation of this.
Okay.
And the experience, I would use three words, basically, that it's an experience that the current generation has an experience of solitude. This is...
Do you mind breaking down what solitude could mean?
Sure. So this is a generation which is so much everywhere and nowhere, in my view. This is a generation that you find having a community of like 1,000 people, a community they've never seen in real life. This is a community that they really pick from the internet, especially the social media community. Somebody tells you, I have 1,000 friends. And they've never met any of these. So to me, as somebody of pre-Gen Z or in the backward, I think this is an experience of solitude, in my view.
Okay, insightful. So does that mean the generation that we're having is more confined in the virtual world?
I believe they are so much in two worlds.
Maybe I could chip in a little bit there and say that, when we talk about the gap in between, the 21st, generation today and the previous one, I mean, today children grow up with the technology. I mean, they are well informed, they are well equipped, with gadgets here and there. So there is that exposure. And today you realize that people would prefer actually to spend, the teenagers, if I may say, they would prefer to spend more time with gadgets than they would with their fellow human beings. And and that causes a lot, a lot happens in their lives as they do that, because it is quite interesting how young people, they would spend 4 hours on phone than coming together and sitting and chat and have a chat and talk. So, and all this will always affect them in one way or the other. It could be positive or negative. So we stand to witness a generation where, like my fellow colleague here was saying, that it is a generation of solitude, where these people are more of reserved because they feel they derive joy, like with gadgets, than they would out there with, maybe chatting with fellow, maybe their age mates and all that. So it's really a big issue that I feel we need to look into, and it has really affected them in one way or the other. And I believe that we all need to come together and address this issue, when it comes to teenage crisis. Okay. And maybe to say something little more, to add more light on that, is that when we talk about the teenage crisis, as you were saying, I wanted our viewers to understand that, to say that it is teenage crisis, there has to be a crisis that we are looking at. And a crisis, we are basically meaning that there is a challenge somewhere, somehow that needs to be addressed. So when we talk about the teenagers crisis, it means that there is a challenge, there is a problem that we need to address when it comes to these teenagers. Okay, so it may be to also help our viewers out there understand who is a teenager. A teenager would be, in simple terms, someone from 13 to 19. That would refer to that as a teenager. But in this context, in this category, we want to look at children who are from 10 to 19 to 18, around there, because these adolescents, they're the stage of development. They are maturing from childhood to adulthood. And we need to pay a very, very keen interest to them, because a lot happens during this time. Behavior changes because it has to do with their emotions, it has to do with their physical change. So a lot happens during that stage. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crescent. As we're highlighting that the teenager right now that we are looking at is one that is aging from 10 to 19, and the crisis at hand is the behavior changes. So today, as we are diving deeper and deeply, let's hear from Elizabeth. What is different between the previous generation and the teenager right now that it is causing a crisis that everywhere in newspapers, on the internet, research is showing that there is a crisis. 80% of the teenagers are undergoing serious behavior changes.
You can even add that even in our homes, these are things that we see, because most of the homes out there, I believe, they have teenagers in the house. So when they look at their teenagers, what do they see? I'm sure that even themselves are seeing these challenges.
Yeah.
So it's that's why I would say that this is very, very important issue to be talked about here today.
So actually, I would appreciate that Noah and Crescent have addressed the divide, the digital divide, where we have digital migrants and digital natives. So I would appreciate that that's what is different. They are able to manipulate all these gadgets and find whatever information they want. But as well, we need to note that these teenagers, the current teenager that I've referred to as the digital native is one who does not actually embrace the social cultural norms. I'll just like the digital migrant. Previously, the digital migrant would adhere to social norms, social and cultural norms. For instance, if instructions are given according to your culture, if I'm a Muganda, if I'm Iteso, if I'm a Musoga, then there were certain social cultural practices or norms that I had to respect. But lately, we are in an era where the teenager who is a Gen Z, perhaps who could be somewhere at the bridge of a Gen Z and a millennial, is interested in adopting practices that are, I will say, that are not from their social cultural background, but again, they embrace them. For instance, when we talk about dress code, you'll find that it's very normal lately for teenagers to dress in a permissive way, the way they feel like. Whereas previously, it was about dressing up according to cultural and societal norms.
Now,
So
talk about the dressing style today. They see me through the conditions, the pants, like those leggings, the bikinis, and it is so normal for them to walk out there. And that is the problem. That's where we're drawing the line here, and that's why.
We can say that it's style, but then what are we getting back to? Who is setting that trend? Is it a positive trend? Is it one that influences the teenager positively? Or it is one that is going to push us into a crisis like we are in now? Because it seems like it's normal right now. I'll contrast Uganda and Somalia, okay? In Somalia, yes, they are teenagers, but you'll not find them half naked. They'll be veiled, fully dressed. In Uganda, we have teenagers who are, interestingly, within the same age bracket, same generation, Gen Zs, perhaps millennials, but at the bridge of a millennial and a Gen Z. But you will find that the one in Uganda is telling you, it's okay, it's my right. And that's where we have gone wrong, because now they have tried to manipulate us into their rights and freedoms. And yet in the past, you knew what your right is, you also knew what your freedoms are, but you were not allowed to violate societal norms.
Okay. Do you mind breaking it deeply? Because I am thinking, okay, you're talking about rights, freedoms, but fashion is my freedom and it's my right to wear what I want. So how best would you break it down for me to understand that it is a crisis? Because for me, it is a trend, it's style, and it's what is happening for every teenager out there.
Can I say something?
Please, go ahead.
In line with Elizabeth, she brings us two contrasting societies.
Okay.
One is the Ugandan. I think we have a bit more freedom culturally than it is in Somalia. In Somalia, it could be stoned or hanged for permissive dressing.
Exactly.
And when Lillian asks, okay, what is this, like, isn't it my freedom and style? This is where I said initially that these are solitary beings now. They no longer care about what society thinks about them. They don't know that their actions have an impact on society. So as long as it's good on me, bikini is good on me, good. The rest should take care of themselves. This is a world for everyone for themselves. So, and that's the solitary experience.
And just maybe to let you know that the teenagers lately have a feeling that society has no rules. Rules do not matter. They set their own rules. But remember that we have universal rules, because being half naked or speaking back, you can express yourself respectfully without being disrespectful, and you're heard. But the moment they come in, they have their phrases. My mental health matters. And you cannot say this. My rights, my freedom. Okay? You are an abuser. You are a narcissist. All those are their manipulative phrases to just get us to leave them to do whatever they want. And that's when the crisis now has spreads out, and we feel that society is overwhelmed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So from what you have highlighted, you are showing that the expression is different. And the teenagers lately are expressing themselves way wild than we had expected.
Yes.
Now the question is, as you have said, that they set their own rules in society. Who is responsible for setting the dynamics of rules? The role dynamics of what should we wear, what should we dress? Whose responsibility is that?
Because I believe that when these teenagers are children, they belong to a family unit. Any nation begins with that smallest unit that is a family. It doesn't matter whether you're 1 or 2 or 3, provided you belong to a family. It doesn't matter whether it's extended, nuclear, foster, whatever. So I believe that charity begins at home. If rules have been set right at home, then I do not think that the magnitude of teenage social behavior will overwhelm us. The moment I know that these are the home rules, this is what is expected of me, mom and dad do not like this, they have told me it is done in this way, or I can do it in this way appropriately, then we are able to set the standards. The only challenge is that even the parents, where we belong, are the ones actually channeling and pushing the teenager, because the teenager will ask, if my mother puts on a bikini, you do not have to get a board or textbooks or send them a memo to tell them on how to dress. What you do is going to influence their lifestyle. They'll watch, they'll observe, they'll adopt, and eventually it will become part of them. So by the time you're trying to reprimand or to condone, they're like, but it's okay, that's what you showed us. What do we do?
Yeah, actually, Lillian, still additionally to Elizabeth, there is an experience that came into my mind when she spoke about the parents, now let's say putting on bikinis. There was an education institution somewhere where a child was sent back home for cutting short the uniform, and they had to come back with their parent. And now this is the disciplinary committee is waiting for the parent to come so that they discipline this child together to show them the right way. And mom shows up worse than the child. So, and
can you imagine what was there right there?
There was a crisis in school. This is a parent, they sent an invitation written to come to school for a discipline hearing. Now the gate man asks the administration, should I let in this parent? The parent has a letter that allows her in. But then
the dress code
that you're fighting in there, she's showing worse. What should we do?
Wow, that's a good question. Who can answer?
I think it gets back to putting, so it all gets back to setting expected behavior, societal behavior, or community behavior. Lately, I see that in several institutions, there is a dress code. You'll find placards or posters saying, do not come in here with shorts, or they will be displaying all the inappropriate dress codes that they do not allow you to come in with. So eventually, you find that if you adhere, if you emphasize, then people will adhere. If you leave it to be a permissive society, then we are not going to redeem the teenager from some of these practices. Because, like I hinted earlier on, charity begins at home.
Let me pick it from there. You know, going back to the question, who is responsible for shaping these teenagers, I want to speak to the parents out there, because these behavior changes that we see in the lives of these young people, there is something informing their behaviors. But like they were mentioning here, that I believe that when it comes to who has to play the major role here, I believe that a number of stakeholders should be at play to ensure that they play a part. But in all this, I want to still say that parents take a bigger part in all this, because those who are watching us, if you're a parent and you have a teenager in your home, how quite often do you sit with these young people and speak to them and talk to them? Because you realize that a lot happens, but the parents do not have time to speak to these young people. If a child shows up in a short skirt and is moving out, as a parent, you should be able to call them back and speak to them. But if you let them go, so you're showing them that it's okay. I mean, I can do it. They don't see any problem with that. So parents need to take up the role of shaping the values of these young people and speak to them. Okay? Because like she said, that charity begins at home. If you don't speak into their lives, whom do you want to speak to them? The teachers you leave these teenagers to, they also have their own issues. They are human beings. They have their own problems. So you're leaving your children to them. You're expecting them to shape their lives. And yet they're also going through a number of challenges in their lives. So I still want to say that parents, wake up and, speak to the lives of your children. Okay, we know that at that age they go through a lot, but parents should take up the mantle and the role of shaping the lives of these children.
And as well, maybe, Crescent, as you request or put forward a message to the parents, they should also be flexible enough to realize that the current teenager has been only left to an individual section of people to parent. Previously, in the different eras, we had where parents would do collective parenting. The teacher had a right over a child and discipline was enforced. Even someone who is a neighbor would enforce discipline or behavior. Even someone, just a visitor, could enforce discipline. But lately, if you are trying to enforce that on a child, let me say if the child is not your biological child, then you're most likely to find yourself in a conflicting situation. We have had incidents where parents come in and ask, why is that teacher who keeps telling my daughter that she's dressed indecently? I want to know, what do you want with my daughter? And sometimes we are afraid and we're like, oh, what am I doing here? So do I enforce discipline or I resign? So at the end of it all,
the other thing
I think collective responsibility should be emphasized.
Where do we draw the line?
Before
The
that,
responsibility of the parent and that of the school.
Before that, Lillian, I wanted to bring something that came into my mind. When we are talking about the fashion and all that, who buys these clothes for these teenagers? Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, because let's look at it. We are saying teenagers these are children. They are not working. I mean, their parents, they depend on their parents for all this. Who does that? Who buys for them these clothes? Sometimes these parents go and buy them and bring them to these kids. Okay. But of course, when we talk about behavior changes, we are not specifically looking at the fashion. There are a lot of other things. This is the time when they become rigid, they become disobedient, they become stubborn. Like a lot happens with their behavior. But that came through in my mind when we talked about fashion. When we say that they are dressed indecently, who are the people sponsoring? Who are the people buying all this and that? So that's why we say, I still want to say that parents need to take up the role of shaping the lives of these young people and directing them to the right path.
Crescent, let's also take into mind that 80% of the student time is at school. As you're encouraging parents to take up their role, they are taken up, I think, 8 hours, 12 hours of the day is the interaction between the teacher and the learner. So as you're encouraging us to take part in the role of these learners, what is your role? Where should we draw the line?
Well, where we draw the line between the parents and the other stakeholders, maybe the teachers and all that, let the parents take up the role of shaping and molding the values and morals of these young people, whereas the educators, let them be the ones taking up the instructional role, making sure that they develop these children in terms of critical thinking, equipping them with some skills in life that will help them to thrive out there. But I want us to know that what the children display at school is what happens back at home. Okay? When these children are not tamed right way before from home, is what we'll see here at school. So that's why I said that let the parents take up the role of shaping the values, the morals of these children, and let them also ensure that there is a stable family for these young people where they can express themselves, be themselves, so that by the time they come at school, then the teachers also, the educators, can do the other role of instructing them, academic-wise and all that kind of thing.
Let's unwind. When we're talking about the values, what do you mean values? Because we are using words like values, teach values, teach values. What do you mean by values? Because what you may find indecent may not be indecent in my home. So let us define what is socially appropriate so that it's easier for our audience to engage in the conversation.
Socially appropriate is the word here. And I really appreciate Crescent and Elizabeth here for throwing deeper insights into this crisis. I'm a Christian, man of the Bible. And in decency, here, I define on the basis of the Garden of Eden. This is where this starts from. Once they sin, they cover themselves with leaves. And when they are asked, okay, what has happened? They are like, we saw that we are naked. So nakedness there comes into the world. And so, of course, God had to get them skins, animal skins. Now we are starting the physical dressing here. And so the standard has been that humans dress. Now that's universal, the dressing. But like my colleagues here said, that we have a group that believes that they are the rules. They are the society rules. Why should it be the way it was? And we have these parents that have been caught up in the busy syndrome. Parents say they are too busy. So they don't have the time to nurture what we believe is right for these children. So these children have been left to the school.
Okay.
And the parent has also been left to the school. You see, like Elizabeth says, you come to the gate and you find a chart showing indecent and decent. That is schooling the parent. So this has been thrown onto the shoulder of the parent and when sort of the school. And when Christian says, oh, parents should take up this, I think I differ with that, because the assumed is that, okay, they should be doing this. But the reality is parents are as equally in a crisis as the children. And now this big problem is on the shoulder of the school, on the shoulder of the teacher. So that's where I see a problem.
And maybe just to supplement on what Numa is saying, we have incidents where all the responsibility has been left to the educator, to the teacher. A child comes into school, does the daily business of learning, in a case of a day scholar, gets back home, and then on Monday, you receive a call. Teacher, are you at school? Yes, I am. Okay, I'm coming to have a conversation. And the parent comes and says, you know what, teacher? My son beat me over the weekend.
Okay.
So who is to solve that? Because something happened at home, you're transferring it to school. Meaning that the parents are equally in a crisis, parenting crisis. Let me put it that way.
Well,
So the teacher is supposed to take it upon herself or himself to manage discipline or behavior within the school environment and at home. And yet, we are supposed to be working in collaboration. Whatever has been started at home, that educator emphasizes at school. And because it is emphasized at school, the parent also emphasizes at home. And together we can now mitigate the crises that are coming up.
Oh, viewers out there, as you can see, the conversation is heated up. It's getting deeper and deeper and deepest. Yes, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Like, subscribe, share on all our media platforms. Chalk Talk UG. So let's continue the conversations. Crescent, why do you think we have these opposing forces between the parents and the teachers in raising this teenager?
well, thank you so much once again, Lillian. To answer your question, I think that there is this the opposing force between the parents and the teachers. I think the issue here is that they are having each side is having a different expectation from the other. You know, parents are expecting that the teachers should take up their role, and as well as the teachers expecting the parents to do so. So there are those expectations which are unmet from both sides. You know, a parent think because we have sent our children at school, they expect the teachers to step in and do the work. But then also the teachers also expect that the parents back at home, they should be doing the job. And this brings up the conflicting issue, the opposing, element in between here. So I think it should be a shared responsibility. Let the parents do their role and let the teachers do their role. And this will iron out the opposing element in between both the parties.
Are there any highlights that we can draw on what is the expectation of the teacher and that of the parent? What are some of those examples that we can give in the shared responsibility?
The different expectations, well, I think the parents need to sit and do their job as well as the teachers do their part. Well, the parents should take up the role of molding and shaping the values, and here I mean the character of these children, the things, the morals, how these children should behave, how they should take themselves. Whereas at school, the teachers also should take up their role of directing these children, ensuring that they equip them with skills that would help them thrive in life out there. And I believe this collaborative effort will help out in all this issue.
Okay.
Lillian.
I think
Yes.
also that what is causing this divide, just like Crescent is pointing out, that if the expectations are not set clearly, I would still add that there is a communication gap. That gap between the and the teacher in terms of communication, correspondence, is what is bringing about this crisis. Because in the end, there is a lot of misinformation or even information that is taken, but it's not digested. Or the individual digests it without any consultation. So I think that if we can think of ways of bridging the gap, the communication gap between the teacher and the parent, then we can be able to mitigate the crisis.
Elizabeth here brings up something very interesting, some very interesting point about the communication gap. So what I see deepening this crisis mostly is the competition between the parent and the teacher, and they are competing for control over this teenager. The teacher feels like, okay, hey teenager, this is what life should be. These are my expectations. The parent also has their expectations of this teenager, and this teenager has not been involved in the middle. So they are tearing this teenager apart. So you find that parents, for example, sometimes have been blamed for being harsh because they've not known how to handle their own child. Others, however, have been blamed for being too soft onto this teenager. And of course, this has been brought up as a cover. You find parents are not so emotionally and physically attached to their children. So what they do is to become their buddies in a wrong way.
Okay.
Like they are buying off this love. So they are not able to nurture. Teachers, on the other hand, have put up themselves in the posture of we are some sort of gods. We determine what life should be. So this is the standard for everyone.
Okay.
And so the standard for the teacher is different from the parenting standard. And in the middle is the teenager. So what the teenager is doing is they are seeing these differing voices, they are seeing the gap, and they are taking advantage of this gap to be their own rules maker.
Well, as you can see that the teenager is placed in the middle. So what systems or structures can we avail to help the parent and teacher collaboration in making sure that they focus on this teenager out there? Elizabeth, would you want to start?
Talking about mitigating this crisis by ensuring that there is collaboration between the teacher and the parent, we need to have parent-teacher conferences where the parents are invited in to have dialogue with the teacher about the child. And when I talk about dialogue about the child, we are not talking about negatives only, but we are also trying to see that there is a restorative approach to molding this child into what society expects him or her to be. So we can have such special days scheduled, whether weekly, monthly, which eventually culminates into the child having the parent more involved in their lives, as well as the teacher keeping pace with what the parent may reveal, or with the parent keeping pace with what the teacher may reveal.
Mm.
So absolutely, I would encourage that we should have often parent-teacher conferences, and not for formality, but with intent.
Okay.
And on top of that, I would add that there should be timely feedback. Once such conferences happen, there should be that feedback from the parent side as well as the teachers to make sure that whatever was discussed and shared about is really bringing out the results, the intended fruits that were meant to be. And if not, then they should now come together and find other possible ways to ensure that it really works out.
I love these teacher-parent conferences so much. I do really love this so much. And I know schools have been trying so much to do this. And we need to really boost this. One thing though stands out for me in these conferences, right from experience as a student, as a teenager, is that these mostly came to turn out to be pirate days. Like, you know, Pontius Pilate.
Okay.
And the governor who had to pass the judgment.
Okay.
So these are crucifixion conferences. Actually, your teacher will tell you that, let me wait for your parent to come. And you know, when you're there and there are these two adults, you have to be numb. You have to be really quiet. This is passing judgment. This is what this one does. This is what this one does. And all you have to nod is in agreement. Yes, yes, yes. And of course, they will pass judgment there and then.
And Noah, I think that's why when I believe that it is more of positive criticism, but to nurture the child. So we can request or find a way of moving away from the crucifixion that you're talking about to how can we help this learner, how can we help this child? We know that this is the weakness or this is the area of improvement. How can we move towards making them a better human being?
For example, I will speak about boarding school, which was most of my school life. So a teacher waits for this long. The teacher doesn't create a relationship with you to tell you something going on. They wait for
a specific day
and they pass judgment on to you. Actually, if these parent-teacher conferences became more collaborative in a way that when the parent comes in, now the child and the teacher are able to give them feedback on what's going on. I think the parent could be like passing on a baton in athletics. That, okay, this is what we are doing. We need you to build with us here.
Okay.
And on top of that, I think there should be clear set objectives for all this that the parent-teacher conferences. And then also as well as there should be enough sensitization between on the side of the teachers and the parents. Let them know why in the first place they're having this. It shouldn't be for, hanging someone, pinpointing someone, pointing fingers, but they should understand that actually they are supposed to work together to bring out the best out of these teenagers.
Okay.
So that's what I believe.
And I believe that that's
thank
what
you.
Talk is addressing right now. That if we can create platforms on which we can have collaborative strategies on how to manage parent, learner, teacher, and the whole education system, then we can get there.
Guests, before we close the session, I would want to ask you one question. If you would recommend one urgent action to help the teenager out there, what would that be?
I think the teenager should be involved.
Involved in
their own growth. They should be involved in the discussions about them. They should be involved in their nurturing. Because we assume these are naive beings. But we are living in the information age. They know so much. And so they have to be involved if we are to have positive outcomes.
Okay. Crescent, do you have something to tell us?
Oh, well, yes. Thank you. According to me, I would think that a number of stakeholders need to come together to ensure that these teenagers are really catered for. And one of the things that I would really advocate for is that maybe the policymakers need to come up with a policy. Maybe let's say they would come up with a program designed to help these teenagers. For example, maybe they would allow like social support mental system into the curriculum to help, provide counselors to help these teenagers outgrow or go through whatever challenges they're going through.
Mm.
Yeah, so I believe that would really be helpful. That let's say government should come up and incorporate all this into the curriculum to help these teenagers to cater for their needs at that stage.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth?
And in my opinion, I would think that the teenager should be given a very conducive platform on which to express themselves freely, but as well to teach them expression on what challenges they face, and also to give them a platform on how to be able to suggest how they can be helped best when they are facing these challenges.
Okay, dear viewers, we are coming to the end of the show, and we're so grateful for the time that you've invested in listening to the conversation. I know you have learned something, and then we have no one to blame but a collective effort in regard to the teenage crisis. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, Chalk Talk Uganda, on YouTube, TikTok, Chalk Talk Uganda, Instagram, Chalk Talk Uganda. Dear viewers, we're coming to an end of the show. It has been interesting, insightful, and I believe that Noah, Elizabeth, and Crescent have given an in-depth on the teenage crisis. See you next time.